Today we are going to talk about eBay vintage diamond rings and specifically purchasing these vintage rings on eBay, the advantages to that, and tips and tricks that will help you out with your purchase. And this presentation is brought to you by www.qualityvintageengagementrings.com. Now, before we start talking about eBay specifically, I want to discuss the vintage rings themselves and why someone would want to purchase a vintage ring. To start off with, these rings are very valuable. They are collector's items. Many of the rings date back to anywhere between the mid to late 1800s to the early 1900s. There are actually specific jewelry style periods that date back into the 1800s and the early 1900s, and they all have very unique styles. We aren't going to go into detail about the specific styles today, but we are going to just talk about, the general vintage rings as a whole. These rings are one-of-a-kind jewelry. Most of them do not have other mates out there that look the same. Many of them have very, very intricate designs and beautiful handiwork that you can't find in modern rings today, or in other rings from the same time period. The designs may be similar, but most of the rings are one of a kind. And if you do have a good vintage ring, it's a great heirloom to pass on to future generations. You can pass them on to your kids, or down through the family, and it's going to be a treasure for your family to have for years to come, because they're so beautiful and they're such high quality rings that you just can't go wrong by purchasing a vintage ring. Many new brides are looking to vintage rings because they can find very unique rings, and so they know that they're going to have a one-of-a-kind engagement ring if they choose a vintage ring. And then there are also lots of collectors on the other end who are collecting many different types of rings, and so vintage rings are definitely the in thing right now. You're not going to go wrong by purchasing a vintage ring. And if you're planning on purchasing a vintage ring, one of the best places to do that is on eBay. And we all hear about eBay, but really, honestly, this is a good place to be getting this type of jewelry for several reasons. First of all, there are very great prices for these rings. They're high quality rings, but because it's being auctioned, you can get a great deal on many of the pieces. It usually is a lot cheaper than going to, say, like an antique store or an estate sale. If you go buy a ring at an antique store, there's always going to be that markup so that the store can make their own commissions on the item. So good prices is definitely a nice advantage that we're all looking for. The second advantage to purchasing rings on eBay is that there's a huge variety of rings available out there. There are lots of different sellers that are combined into one place, so you're going to have as many options as you want. You can choose the type of stone, the type of metal. If you have any specifics, you can probably find a ring that's close to what you're looking for. So the variety alone is definitely one of the biggest benefits. And then the last benefit to purchasing these rings on eBay is that it's going to save you the time and money of driving around. Most towns only have one or two antique stores, and so if you're wanting to get a variety of rings to choose from, you're going to have to drive a pretty good distance to be able to look at a lot of rings and be able to find one that you like. So eBay does give you lots of options and helps you to save the money on gas and driving your car around. Now, if you do decide to purchase a vintage ring on eBay, there are a few tips that I would highly suggest. This is important because you want to make sure that you're getting the best bang for your buck. First of all, do your homework. Know the information about the vintage piece that you're interested in. Specifically, know about the gemstone that you're buying, the metal that's included in the setting there, what time period the ring dates back to. And if you need any of this information, we do have lots of great resources on our website. That was qualityvintageengagementrings.com, and you can look it up and see all the specific details about the time periods and tips and tricks to help you buy the right type of stone. So there are some good resources out there. Go into your purchase informed so that you know whether or not you're getting a good deal on the piece. My second tip for you is to make sure to request paperwork to go with the ring, because you want to make sure that you're not getting ripped off, you're not buying a fake. So ask the seller to provide you with either a certificate or some type of a letter from a jeweler or a company that has the authority to judge the ring and to be able to say whether or not it is a fake or a real stone. And the last option that you can do to just try and keep yourself protected as you're making this big purchase is to check the seller's ratings, read some of the feedback from some of the other customers, and you can see what their track record is like. Overall, the advantages of buying vintage rings on eBay are awesome. You can get some great deals on there, and especially if you take it slow and if you know which piece you're looking for and you do your homework about the seller, you can get some great deals on there. So I would definitely check it out if you're looking for a vintage engagement ring. But if you need any more information about engagement rings or vintage rings or anything along those lines, again, check out our website. We've got some awesome information there. And that website again was www.qualityvintageengagement.rings.com.